Imagine if the government could take away your freedom to travel, and when you ask them why, their only answer was, just because. Sounds crazy, right? Well, it's not a hypothetical. It actually happened. And the court case that followed, Maneka Gandhi versus the state, became the moment that the soul of the Indian Constitution was reinterpreted. It was transformed from just words on a page into a living, breathing document that protects fairness for everyone. So let's start with that really basic question. Can the state just decide to curb one of your most fundamental freedoms and not give you a single good reason? This one question, it gets right to the heart of this timeless battle, the power of the government versus the liberty of the individual. And the answer to that huge question was hammered out back in 1977, all because of one journalist, Maneka Gandhi. What started as her personal fight to get her passport back ended up becoming a fight for the rights of every single person in India.
So how did this all kick off? Well, it didn't start with some grand legal theory in a courtroom. It began with a simple yet pretty shocking government action: seizing a passport.
Okay, so here's the play-by-play. In 1976, Maneka gets her passport, no problem. But just a year later, bam, a letter shows up ordering her to surrender it. The reason they gave? This incredibly vague phrase, in the public interest. So naturally, she asks for a real explanation, right? But the government just doubled down, refusing to give any details and hiding behind that same public interest line. No hearing, no explanation, just a command.
Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth could the government believe this was legal? And that's a fair question. To get it, we need to hit rewind and look at the legal world before this case, because the rules of liberty were very, very different back then. See, the big precedent at the time came from a 1950 case called A.K. Gopalan. In that case, the court decided that all of our fundamental rights existed in what you could call watertight compartments. Just think of them as totally separate, isolated silos. One right had absolutely nothing to do with the others. And this right here shows you the core of the problem. Article 21, the one that protects your life and personal liberty, said the government had to follow a procedure established by law. But the courts took that to mean that as long as Parliament just passed any law, the procedure was automatically valid. It didn't have to be fair, it didn't have to be reasonable. And because all the rights were in those separate silos, a law that took away your liberty under Article 21 didn't have to pass the reasonableness test that applied to other freedoms, like freedom of speech under Article 19.
So, with this old interpretation in its back pocket, the government felt it was on pretty solid ground. But Maneka Gandhi decided to challenge this whole idea head-on, and that led to a landmark battle in the Supreme Court that would pit these old, rigid ideas against a revolutionary new vision of what liberty should be. And this is where you see two totally different views of the Constitution just laid bare. On one side, Maneka's lawyers argued that the right to travel is a key part of personal liberty, and any procedure that takes it away has to be fair, just, and reasonable. And this was the big one. They argued that fundamental rights are all connected. They're not in separate silos. The government, on the other hand, just stuck to the old script. Procedure established by law means any law we pass, period. They argued that public interest was all the justification they needed to provide. The stage was set for a truly monumental decision, and what the Supreme Court delivered wasn't just a verdict, it was a constitutional revolution. It's what we now famously call the Golden Triangle ruling. So first, the court took that key phrase, procedure established by law, and completely transformed its meaning. They declared that it couldn't be just any old procedure passed into law. No, the procedure itself had to be fair, just, and reasonable. This single move basically breathed the spirit of fairness and due process right into the heart of Article 21. And the court's logic here was just so powerful. Justice Bhagawati wrote in his opinion that equality and arbitrariness are sworn enemies. In other words, any action by the state that's arbitrary, like just seizing a passport without a good, fair reason, automatically violates Article 14, the right to equality. An unfair procedure is an unequal one. Simple as that. And this led directly to the creation of the Golden Triangle. The court ruled that Articles 14, 19, and 21 are deeply intertwined. You can't separate them. Think of it like this. Any law that takes away your liberty under Article 21 now has to pass two more tests. First, it has to be fair and not arbitrary to satisfy Article 14. And second, if it restricts a freedom like travel, that restriction has to be reasonable to satisfy Article 19. Those old silos, they were torn down for good. Okay, so a journalist got her passport back, but the impact of this ruling goes so much further than one person's travel plans. This decision from 1978 is still one of the most important pillars of our democracy today.
The legacy of this case is just immense. For starters, the whole idea of personal liberty got way bigger. It was confirmed that the right to travel abroad is a fundamental right. It put a powerful check on the government, forcing any action that limits liberty to be fair and transparent. It completely overturned that old idea that our rights are isolated islands and proved they're an interconnected ecosystem. And crucially, it enshrined that core principle of natural justice, the right to be heard, as an essential part of our Constitution.
The Maneka Gandhi case gave all of us powerful tools to hold the government accountable. But it also left us with a vital, ongoing question. The court didn't get rid of the idea of public interest. It just demanded that when the government uses it, it has to be fair and not arbitrary. So the debate continues. In our world today, where exactly do we draw that delicate line between protecting the public and protecting an individual's liberty? It's a question this landmark case forces us all to keep asking.